So, as as we alluded to in the title slide, we are so excited today to talk about one of our very celebrated and very much promoted and rituals that we recognize within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. If you want, I guess you could use the term holiday if that's what you better associate with. But this is definitely a celebration that we look forward to each and every year, even outside of the month of May, when these ALD events usually take place, or as we would call it, African Liberation Day. Even outside of ALD months, we are still very much preparing and planning for this beautiful, beautiful day because it gives us an opportunity to connect with folks in person. It gives us an opportunity to be reminded of what's happening on the continent and how it's connected to everything that we know is affecting the diaspora. And also, it reminds us of why we need to continue to fight. It reminds us of what is at stake if we choose to stop fighting. And it reminds us that there's something much bigger than ourselves. This revolution is bigger than ourselves. Founded in 1958 as Africa Freedom Day by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the co-founder, Kwame Nkrumah, in 1963 considered African Freedom Day, and it was later changed to African Liberation Day. And so, as we've pointed out before, we have Kwame Nkrumah, who not only gave birth to being a co-founder of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, but he also established Africa Freedom Day. And later in the 1960s, it was changed to African Liberation Day. A few years of neo-colonist elements in Africa, they started an effort to change the day to Africa Day, but we reclaim African Liberation Day, or as we abbreviate it, ALD, because Nkrumah's correct vision was that ALD serves as a vehicle to organize the African masses to fight for Pan-Africanism. And we will gently remind you that when we define Pan-Africanism, we are arguing for one unified socialist Africa. So we believe in the principles of socialism. We understand how much they would benefit our motherland greatly. And we also understand how much socialism operating on the African continent would impact Africans everywhere, even those that are outside of the African continent. Because as Nkrumah also said, any African anywhere belongs to the African nation. So even if you were born outside of the African continent, you are still an African, which means you should still be celebrating. You should still be commemorating. You should still be promoting African Liberation Day. If you don't know what that is, you should research it. If you are in fact African, you should research it because that's a day that you should be celebrating. That's a day you should be acknowledging that all of our struggles are really not that different, especially when we look at the struggles of Africans on the continent compared to Africans in the diaspora, or this beautiful, beautiful theme of this year, helping us understand that the struggles of African people are similar to those of Palestinians, are similar to those of indigenous folks, and so on and so forth throughout the world. And so African Liberation Day, for me, especially as a young member, as a child, I grew up in the Young Pioneers Institute, which is a component of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, or what I would call YPI, Young Pioneers Institute. But I was upheld and I was brought up being at ALD every single year since I was in my mother's womb. And even when I was walking in a stroller, I remember going to that event every single year like clockwork. I remember getting excited. We wear white as a sign of unity. I remember ironing my whites the morning of. I remember, trying to figure out what kind of hip I wanted to wear that day. I remember that in Sacramento, we would have a march and we'd be able to march in the streets as a way of expressing ourselves. Sometimes Africans who weren't even at African Liberation Day, maybe because they didn't realize that this event was taking place, would see us marching in the streets and they would clap and cheer for us. And if they didn't have any obligations, they would join us with the march. And we would start from one point and end at McClatchy Park, which was where the event was then later to be held for the remainder of the day. There was entertainment, there was food, there was live music entertainment, as well as some edutainment to help you think and to be more critical about things. And more importantly, we had comrades who were from different organizations who would come and would speak on behalf of their organization while still tying in how their struggle is connected to our struggle. And that was the whole intention of us having comrades like members of the American Indian Movement, members of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. We intentionally would invite these comrades to come out because we wanted people to hear about the struggles that they had as Indigenous people, the struggles that they had as Palestinians. And then they were having us talk about the struggles that we had as Africans so that we could really kind of make those connections. For years, this has been happening. And that's the beautiful thing about the All African People's Revolutionary Party is we're not just now talking about the struggles of Indigenous people. We're not just now talking about the struggles of Palestinians, especially since October of last year. This has been going on since before I was born. So at least for plus 40 years plus, this has been happening where these kind of conversations have been taking place. And sure, we had to raise our political education. We didn't know as much as we know now as we did then. And that's why political education is so important. That's why being in a structure such as work study is so important, because we had to read more to learn and grow. We had to read more to ascertain that information. We had to connect those dots and have those discussions. And then from there, we were able to develop an argument based off of how we wanted to show solidarity for our comrades who we later would realize are really in a very similar bind as us. The only difference is their land is Palestine and our land is Africa, right? And so just understanding that, A, all the struggles are connected. And that's why the theme is so appropriate and so beautiful, because it is the same struggle. And B, also understanding that there has never been a ritual that I can think of that is celebrated in the US that has promoted the fact that oppression is a terrible, terrible system and needs to be terminated. Every single ritual that I can think of, every single routine that I can think of, or as you might call it, every single holiday has a direct connection to capitalism. It has a direct connection to profiting and making money, and not even existing for the purpose of advancing humanity or changing conditions of humanity to make them better. None of the so-called holidays that you all may celebrate are doing anything to reduce unhoused people being on the streets and these harsh weather conditions. None of the so-called holidays you're celebrating are doing anything to stop African femme and African women from dying while they give birth, or Indigenous folks from dying while they give birth for that point. None of the holidays you're doing are doing anything to address the education deficits. They're doing nothing to address the health disparities that are existing. The fact that Africans are more likely to develop higher, more intensive and aggressive rates of cancer and die faster. None of these holidays are doing anything to care about the fact that poverty, poor people are more likely to be unhealthier and die sooner. None of those holidays are doing anything about that. You know why? Because it's more important to make money and to profit, even if the person you're profiting off of is literally dying. That's why morticians and funeral homes are doing so well, because you will always have death in this world. And how crooked is it for you to charge someone so much money when they're literally mourning the loss of a loved one? But that's the reality, folks. That's how vicious capitalism is. It does not have to care about inhumane it is, because that was never the intention. The intention was always to profit and to continue profiting and to continue making money. And so you, if you want to hold on to your humanitarianism, or if you want to revitalize it because maybe you've forgotten how to be humane, coming to events like African Liberation Day can help with that. Increasing your political education can help with that. Joining some organization that is working for justice can help with that. And if nothing else, at least supporting us raising money for African Liberation Day. So a quick shout out to our Venmo handler, which is at A-ARPP. A-ARPP, okay? And so just making sure, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. A-APRP. Our Venmo is A-APRP, celebrating us and helping us to raise money. We've talked in great detail about how expensive these African Liberation Day events can be. But what you may not know is that because we're coming out of the quarantine and we're trying to still be safe with the rates being what they are, we're starting to have more events for African Liberation Day in person, but we're still having our international broadcast, which means there are events taking place on the continent that will be internationally broadcasted, and you can join on YouTube and be able to see and witness what's happening. But you may have a African Liberation Day that is happening locally in the area where you reside. If you don't live in Africa, you may have an event that's happening very close to where you live. There's all kind of different chapters that are organizing events. And so these events cost money, you all. We need equipment, we need sound systems, we need honorariums for speakers, we need food to feed people for the hospitality portion. For the webinar, we need translator fees because translators cost money. And unfortunately, colonization has costed us to pay for a Portuguese translator, to pay for a French translator. We have a translator who sometimes we even have a Spanish translator, depending on how many different folks are in demand. And so we have some serious fees that we need to pay for. And we even have awards that we have to mail out, sometimes internationally. You can imagine how expensive that can be. So please make sure you send us some money to A-A PRP at Venmo, and it's the same handler at PayPal. The only difference is there's no dash. So it's just at AAPRP for our PayPal as well. I'm going to go to the next slide, please. So we've talked about the background of African Liberation Day, how it came to be about. I mentioned to you that we started off with the name of Africa Unity Day, and then we progressed into African Liberation Day. And so we're now understanding that with the AAPRP, as well as a connection to African Liberation Day, in 1972, the AAPRP joined a nationalist coalition called African Liberation Day Support Committee, which was organized and designed to help put together ALD activities in Washington, D.C. from 1972 through 1975. Now, before the All African People's Revolutionary Party broke with the coalition due to their unwillingness, and this is key, they broke apart from them because the coalition was not interested in building a focus on Africa or including a class analysis while focusing on Africa and other liberation struggles, such as the indigenous people, the Palestinians. And I think that's really important to mention. And so, as we pointed out, we were working with the coalition and we were doing some solid work from 72 to 75, but we decided this is not in the best interest of the AAPRP because we need to focus on Africa with a class analysis. That is always going to be so important. We have to understand how capitalism and imperialism play in to us being in the conditions that we're in. Every single moment that I get, I talk to people about the circumstances in the world and how things are, especially for people that are not as socially advantaged, if you will, to benefit from different things, whether it's economics or whether it's education, or it might even be having access to transportation. As we call it in the public health world, some people suffer from social determinants of health because they literally just live in a world where their health is already being determined depending on their gender, depending on their race, depending on their class status. They're more likely to be unhealthy, right? And so having a class analysis, to me, and if you're trying to understand the world that we live in, which is very much based on class, is just as important as having a steering wheel if you're trying to operate a motor vehicle. that there's no way that you cannot be able to steer the vehicle without that. And having a class analysis allows you to understand just how people are projected in this world, just how people are perceived in this world. And usually it's based on the amount of income they have access to. Usually it's based on how consistent their income is. It might even be based on how much income they have and what they can do with that income. Can they use it to profit organizations that are privately owned and funded? Can they use it to manage organizations that are privately owned and funded? Like, this is where that comes from. And this is also why, for people that have access to income, they're more likely to be treated better. You've seen that, right? You've seen that taking place in circumstances. You've seen people who are quote unquote dressed nicely. They're more likely to have the doors held open for them. People who are more polished and together, they're more likely to drive nicer cars, and people are more likely to do things for them because of that. All of this BS is based on how you are perceiving the fact that this person has money, and you're basically trying to be opportunistic to see how you can get your hands on some of that. However, you can get in with the in crowd, that's what you're trying to do, because that's what capitalism teaches you to do. It doesn't teach you to celebrate the fact that we can use collectivism to try to figure out how that money can be more equitable and accessible to everyone. It doesn't even remind you that you have a responsibility to contribute in the same way so that you too can bring income into that pot that we all can collectively benefit from. None of those thoughts cross your mind if you're not practicing collectivism, which is driven by humanitarianism. The only thoughts that cross your mind if you're using capitalism as your driving force is to be individualistic, to only think about yourself, and to be selfish in terms of thinking about how you can benefit from something, all the while not understanding how the rest of the world still needs to benefit too. And just because your circumstances are changed because of your income doesn't mean they're going to be changed for long. And it certainly doesn't mean that it's going to change the world that you live in, which will still very much be impacted by poverty and the challenges that come with poverty. As I said, housing security, food insecurity, education, career insecurity, income insecurity, all of these things are tied around one thing: money. It's all tied around that. And if you don't have consistent access to that, your class status is going to suffer. So it is imperative that we have a class analysis when we're thinking about how Africa has been traumatized, been victimized, been divided up and conquered and colonized. It is very much about classism when we think about that. And even to this day, we can understand examples of that taking place. How countries that were colonized by the British and by the French, for example, are more likely to have more of a how do I say, they're just known to be more elite in terms of those resources being available compared to countries that were colonized by the Portuguese. Well, the Portuguese don't have as many resources as the French do or as the British do. And so those countries that are colonized by the Portuguese are trying to play a little catch up, if you will. And so these are just different examples of how classism is a very important conversation to have. Class analysis is the only way that you can really understand how we can address this and move forward. And then last but not least, I appreciate the AAPRP from pulling away from the coalition, because you have to connect other liberation struggles to ours. That's how we're going to gain collectivism. That's how we're going to gain momentum. That's how we're going to gain humility. If we understand that it's not just about us, if we understand that the same messed up situation happened to them folks over there, it happened to those folks over there, it happened to us. The only difference is their land got taken from them and we got taken from our land. That's the basic difference. Other than that, and so yes, we should work together with the indigenous people. Yes, we should work together with the Palestinian people. We'd have to be out of our minds not to, because they have a similar fight. They have motivation to fight. They want to get their land back. Isn't that what we want? We want our land back too. They don't have control of their resources. We don't have control of our resources. Why would you pass up an opportunity to join forces with someone who you clearly know is having the same motivation as you, is interested in the same outcome as you? And that's the beauty. They want us to get Africa back just like we want them to get occupied Palestine. They're not just in it so that they can use us. They're in it so that we can benefit, and we're in it so that they can benefit. that is how the world is going to change. And so, as I prepare to close, I'll just state this as well. In 1976, the AAPRP organized African Liberation Day on its own in DC, with 40,000 supporting our revolutionary nation. We had a class and a gender platform. And so we had 40,000 people who showed up in 1976 at our very first ALD, separate from the coalition. And I was so excited to read that we were able to have people showing up because they wanted to celebrate our revolutionary nation, our class and gender analysis and platform. Today, the AAPRP organizes between 15 and 20 ALD commemorations all over the African world. 15 to 20, you all. And our theme, once again, for 2024 is, quote, same struggle, smash settler colonialism in Palestine, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania, end quote. And so definitely look up where your nearest African Liberation Day event will be held. You see the picture on the slide of our ALD celebration that took place in DC in the early 70s. And again, we ask for your support as we raise money through Venmo and PayPal. Venmo handler, once again, is at A-AAPRP, A-APRP, and our PayPal is at AAPRP. Once again, the PayPal is at AAPRP. We thank you all so much. As I pointed out, ALD is a beautiful celebration, but it costs a lot of money. And so we thank you for any donations you can give, and I will pass it back over to Comrade Ajamu. Ashe.
Ashe, obrigada, Madasi, Asante Sana. Thank you very much, Shakura. And just talking about why African liberation is so very critical, right? Why it's so important, right? The capitalist system, it builds and maintains its power through its ability to control the narrative, right? Malcolm X talked about how after World War II, or during World War II, the capitalist media propaganda mechanism had everybody in the world hating Germany, Nazi Germany, and loving the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union had signed a cooperation agreement with the US to take out Nazi Germany, right? That's the history. So Malcolm talked about that. Had everybody hating Nazi Germany during the war and loving the Soviet Union. After World War II concluded and the US embarked upon the Marshall Plan to rebuild Western Europe, Germany now became a friend of the US, as it still continues to be to this day. And so Malcolm talked about after the war, the capitalist propaganda mechanism had everybody in the world loving Germany and hating the Soviet Union, because now the US was engaged in this Cold War against the Soviet Union. Or when they talk about, you know, third world, what that means is, because I mean, we talk about this stuff, and, you know, a lot of times when you probe deeper, people don't even really understand what they're talking about when they use these terms like third world. So what that meant is, at that time during the Cold War, you had the first world, which was the capitalist world, which is led by, and still led by, the United States of America. And then you had the second world, was the Eastern European countries, or what they called the Eastern Bloc at that time, which was led by the Soviet Union. And the so-called third world, as termed by Mao Zedong at the 1955 Bandung Conference, was supposed to represent the colonized people of the world, realizing our power, and that we're not a part of the first or the second world. And although, you know, we're not Maoists, but I see some value in that analysis, in the sense that what Malcolm talked about is correct, that the propaganda machine has structured what it wants us to believe and how it wants us to see the world. And we should always see the world from our interests and our perspective, not just as selfish human beings, as Shakur mentioned, oh, excuse me, I'm allergic to capitalism and imperialism. I apologize. But because we want to see the world through the lens of a people who place humanity and the planet Earth above all else. So capitalist institutions advance loyalty and support for capitalism. That's all they do. They don't care anything about the world. Like they're bombing the hell out of the Palestinian people right now. And all they want you to do is watch TV and go out to a bar and have a drink and not even think about what they're doing. Even though those of you that live in this backward cesspool nation, they're doing it with your money, with your tax revenue. That's how they do it. But they don't want you to think about that because they don't care about that and they don't want you to care about it. So they, in order to ensure it, because most of us here in this country follow their agenda. We don't care about those things, or we say we care about, but we do nothing to address it. So that means you don't care, no matter what's coming out of your mouth. So the way that they're able to ensure that that propaganda is so effective, like it is they have their own capitalist and imperialist institutions, right? So if they tell you, this is coming up on May, which means in July, they'll have their 4th of July here in this backward country. So if they tell you on July 4th that this is the freest country in the world, it's the most democratic country in the world, then you're not going to think about what is this country doing to people around the world, because you believe that whatever it is, it's in the best interest of those people because this is the best country on earth. That's what people in this country, I know a lot of people watch this program that don't live here, thank goodness, but you have to understand that people in this country believe that propaganda. They actually believe that this is the best country on earth, even though when you break down into categories, there's nothing that this country is best at. It's among the it's among the worst countries in the world as it relates to healthcare. It's among the worst countries in the world as it relates to education. It's among the worst countries in the world as it relates to the ability to solve basic problems like making sure people have a COVID vaccine, even though there's more than enough money here to produce that when that was an issue. It still is one of the most sluggish countries in the world at being able to do that. The only thing that this country is best in the world at is killing people, people owning weapons of destruction to kill people, the amount of money people spend on alcohol and drugs to numb their pain at the day-to-day dehumanization they experience under this backward decadent system. These are the only things that this country is number one at. But yet they want to tell you that, well, it's the freest, most democratic country in the world, and the U.S. military fought for your, like I had a guy 2 days ago, I don't know, 3 days ago, something. He's telling me, well, I don't agree with your perspective, but I fought for your right to have them. I'm like, you didn't fight for nothing for me. Who told you that lie? And he just looked at me because they're not used to someone challenging that, propaganda is never challenged. So he probably never heard that before. I'm like, you didn't fight for a damn thing for me. Don't overrate yourself. Don't overestimate yourself. You did nothing for me. I said, the people that did everything, the fact that I can say what I'm saying right now is because of my own people who got their heads busted in for my right to have the opportunity to even live where I wanted to live, where I could afford to live, to go to school, to work where I wanted to work. All that was because of my people in this civil rights movement, in this backward, decadent society that still to this day refuses to recognize what it does to us on a daily basis. So I told him, so I don't know who the hell told you that you going over to Iraq or Afghanistan. I'm with them. I'm with the Iraqis. I'm on their side. I'm with the Afghani people. I'm on their side. I'm with the Vietnamese people. I'm on their side. I wish they would have kicked your ass when you went to those countries because you had no right to go there. And he looked at me and he's like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, you goddamn right. You had no right to go there. And if they would have killed you, they would have been within their right. If somebody come in your house, that's the attitude you would have. So I don't know what got into your head that filled it with this. I do know what got in there. But my point is that this is what they want people here to believe. And they're very successful at propagating this nonsense. And they do that through their institutions. That's why every sporting event here, whether it's the National Basketball Association, the National Football League, US Football, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, tennis, crochet, even cornhole tournaments. They start with that backward ass anthem and that worthless toilet paper flag that they call the US flag. And they want to shove all that down your damn throat. And these major sports organizations like the NBA and the Major League Baseball, the NFL, the US military pays them millions of dollars for this display of reactionary patriotism every year. That's why all this happened. People gotta start thinking, like, what the hell does a national anthem have to do with a basketball game? You all know nobody here cares about that stuff. You don't even pay attention. If you go now, when I go to the games, I don't stand up and salute that stuff. I don't salute America. America doesn't salute me. Why should I salute it? So I don't do that. But the people who are there, if you go to sporting events, and I do go occasionally, they're not even like they're at the beer thing trying to buy their beer. They're talking about their weekend. Like it's not even real. It's not even serious. But they have their institutions that keep presenting this propaganda so that people don't even think about it deep enough to challenge it. So we have to have institutions, and African Liberation Day is one of our institutions to challenge their backward institutions with positive revolutionary principles, ideas, and action. So when we say the theme for 2024 is smash settler colonialism, in Palestine, the Africa, the Americas, and Oceania, what we're trying to put into place, you all, is a conscious raising mechanism to help people understand, first, what is settler colonialism? It's these Europeans coming to all these countries around the world, dominating the people who are already there and setting up an empire there. That's what settler colonialism is. That's what's happening today in occupied Palestine. That's what's happening in Oceania, what they call South Africa. That's what's happening in Zimbabwe. That's what's happening here all throughout the Americas, from Canada all the way down to Chile, is settler colonialism, where these Europeans have come in and they've set up an empire. And I know, our school systems have failed us, so people don't know what we mean when we say Oceania, so we have to define it. Oceania is a collection of 14 countries that exist between Asia and the Americas. Countries you know of, like Fiji, right? Like all of those countries out of that region, Australia. Australia is a settler colony. White people went there and stole it from African people who migrated to Australia from Africa, or they call them the Aborigine people. That's a settler colony. In Fiji, dominated by settler colonists. Hawaii, Hawaii is a damn settler colony. The vast majority of Hawaiian people don't want these Europeans that they call them haoles. You got to study the history. The people in Hawaii took up arms in 1959 and made every effort they could to drive the United Snakes out of Hawaii. I know to us, Hawaii is just this wonderful place we vacation to, and that's all we want to think of about it. We don't want to hear all this talk about what happened there. But if somebody came in your damn house and took it, and you wouldn't want people coming to your house, oh, this is a great house, I want to come here on vacation, Airbnb, but this is my house they stole. Well, I don't want to think about that. I just want to enjoy your house. I mean, what kind of backward thinking is that? So this is what we're talking about when we say smash, when we say same struggle, smash settler colonialism in Palestine, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. And there you see a picture of our 2023 African Liberation Day commemoration in Guinea-Bissau. As Shakura mentioned, please donate. Venmo at A-APRP and PayPal at AAPRP. We're hosting as many African Liberation Days as we possibly can with this theme, with this action, with this work, because our enemies never relent. They don't rest, so we can't rest. We have to be just as committed and more so than they are. So we talk about this question. And the next part of that is, so what does ALD do? Like, what does it do for us? Why is it important? Why should I support African Liberation Day? And you see the comrades there at one of the, I think this was the last African Liberation Day we had, 2019, before the pandemic, here in Oakland, California. You see the comrades there who organized that event, and I'm in that picture in the back with my fist in the air. But with the question and the answer, what does ALD do? What does it do for us? So when we have multiple African Liberation Day commemorations on 3 continents in the Caribbean, and that's just the AAPRP alone, there are many other formations that have African Liberation Day that we wholeheartedly support. Even if they don't use our theme, we still support because we understand the importance of the institution. What that does, and that's why we gave you the history since 1958, is our consistency. Shakur talked about growing up, all the work that we did every year growing up in African Liberation Day. It was a part of her life. Like Christmas is a part of many of your lives. African Liberation Day was a part of her life, right? Like Thanksgiving is a part of many of your lives. African Liberation Day was a part of her life. We didn't allow her to celebrate. Her mother and I divorced when Shakura was 4 years old, but there was some things that we understood and agreed to in 1993 and 94, and that was that our daughter's interests and consciousness and mental and physical and spiritual health was more important than whatever happened in our personal relationship with one another. And so we remain committed to those principles. We still to this day remain committed to those principles. And that's allowed what Shakur talked about to happen, where she grew up in this struggle. She saw it. Nobody was taking her to no damn sit on no cracker Santa Claus lap. She never did that. She's never once in her life did that. And I'm saying that if more of us had that kind of institutional fortitude with our kids, we wouldn't have the kind of problems you see with our kids today. We didn't have those kind of problems with her. And because we raised her with a different vision. And I'm not saying that because I'm saying we're special. I'm saying that's what it's going to take to get us out of this hole that we're in, you all. We have to create our own institutions based on our culture and our desire to see a better world. We cannot keep talking like we want to do something different, but yet continuing to participate in these people's institutions that are designed to destroy us. How is that working out for us? So what we're saying is that African Liberation Day is a critical institution, and we've been able to institutionalize the principles of ALD in all areas of the world. We sponsor African Liberation Day as well as other activities all year round, but we're focused on ALD right now. We have African Liberation Day activities in French-speaking countries, in Portuguese-speaking countries, in Spanish-speaking countries, countries where they speak Creole, countries where they speak Swahili, and of course English as well, and many others. We have it in German. We have ALD activities in Germany. We have it all over the world. Same theme in German, same thing in Swahili, in French, in Portuguese, in Spanish, in Creole. All of this, same philosophy. And the reason why it's so exciting to us is because all my life I've heard, well, our people can't ever get together. Well, the AAPRP helped smash that backward nonsense for me early on because I've seen it. I've gone all over the world and worked to build the AAPRP. There's no way in hell you can convince me our people can't unite. And in fact, I know that because I've worked with people in the AAPRP I couldn't even have a conversation with because we didn't speak the same language. But we were doing the same work at the same place at the same time. So that how can I have those experiences? Not once, not twice, but countless times all over the world, and then come back here and listen to your backward ass tell me, well, our people can never unite. And all you've done, you haven't even traveled 20 minutes your whole life. Why the hell would I listen to you? I'm inspired by what our people do around the world to create unity for ourselves. Same objective, same work. And with all the attacks that take place against African unity, we ain't never gonna be united. Black people can't unite. We ain't never gonna, with all that nonsense that goes on. African Liberation Day is a clear and irrefutable rejection of that backward concept that we cannot come together as a people. It's a clear refutation of that nonsense. And that's why the work of the APRP is so important. I don't care whether you agree or not. We don't need you. Look, somebody the other day, well, I don't want to join the APRP because I just think that what you're doing is not what our people need. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. What organization are you going to participate in? You think I'm going to sit here and argue with you about that? I mean, I've talked to you for 15 minutes. This is what I told the person. I've talked to you for 15 minutes. I wouldn't even want you in the APR. It'd be too much work, too much emotional labor. You're not, to me, politically mature enough to make a commitment in life. I'm just telling you how I see it. So I'm glad you don't want to join the APRP because I don't want that kind of stress in my life. But you still are not off the hook. You still got to do something for our people. You figure out what the hell it is because you already said you don't want to listen to us. So you figure out what it is, but you still got to do something because irrefutably we are going to come together. No question about that. So this is the this is what we want to close with. I'm having problems getting my screen to cooperate. Sorry about that. So the last question is, how can I support African Liberation Day? Well, we've given you, we need your donations. As you see a picture there of a recent African Liberation Day in Ghana that we helped sponsor. But donate to Venmo, A-APRP, or to PayPal at AAPRP and make those donations. Give whatever you can now. If you can get, if all you can give is a handful of change, then give that. We respect and appreciate your contribution. But if you can donate more, do that, because what you're doing is you're contributing to the work to unify African people all over the world. So all these African people I see that are always talking about how people need to unite, then yeah, this is a concrete opportunity for you to contribute to that. So please help. But that's not the only thing you can do. That's the bare minimum. It's like the man that says, well, I pay my child support, but you never in the child's life. I had somebody say that to me not that long ago. I pay my child support. I'm like, you're standing here telling me this, someone who has been, although I've been divorced from my child's mother for 30 years, I've been in every aspect of my child's life, and I'm supposed to be impressed about you paying child support? I mean, to me, you should be, I don't understand. I would be ashamed to even bring that up if I were you. I would be ashamed. If that was my reality, I would be ashamed to bring that up. I mean, what am I supposed to tell you? Oh, that's a great job you're doing, just paying money. That's the bare minimum. So yes, yes, pay your child support. And yes, make a contribution to African Liberation Day 2024, but you should be doing a lot more with your child than paying child support, and you should be doing a lot more for your people than just donating to African Liberation Day. So the more important things you can do, because that's the bare minimum, we need it, but it's the bare minimum, is join the All African People's Revolutionary Party and do Pan-African work. That's a critical thing, because we are doing this work. I was just on a panel last week, and our people mean well, but we just, we're not mature enough to understand that everybody doesn't have to do what I think they have to do. That's where we're at right now. If you're not doing what I think we need to do, then you're not doing anything. And, I was on a panel, and the brother was, he was going on and on about the kind of mutual aid work that his group does. Wonderful work. They got gardens and stuff they were doing. That's wonderful work. And he's saying, like, if you ain't doing that, you ain't doing nothing. And, we didn't challenge him because that's not what we were there to do. But the important thing to remember is that the work that we're doing, we're talking about like unifying the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau and the Pan-Africanist Congress of Oceania, South Africa. Just a quick example. I can be all day giving you the examples of the work we do. And we've done a tremendous amount of work to bring that about. We have people in the APRP and in the PAC, people in the APRP and in the African Party for Independence of Guinea-Bissau. I'm one of them. I'm one of them because of the work that I've done in the party and with the PAIGC. I'm one of the people that has membership in both political formations. The PAIGC won national elections in Guinea-Bissau. Imagine what we could do, you all, with the work to unify our people if we had state power around the world. Because we don't have that right now. And we're not going to get that by creating gardens. I'm not talking against creating gardens, but don't sit there and demean the work that we're doing when we're creating a pathway for us to have state power around the world to bring about African unity, where we can not only have some gardens on 1 or 2 acres, we can have millions of acres of food being grown to feed our people. That's what we're aiming at. And if you don't understand that, that's fine. We're happy to explain it to you. But this is what the work is of the APRP. That's what we are talking about when we say Pan-Africanism. And you won't know that just by reading an article or half-ass attending 1 or 2 work study meetings. You got to commit yourself to this work to understand the work. So join the APRP and do Pan-African work. That's one thing. Come to African Liberation Day. And we have a website, africanliberationday.net. It'll tell you where all the African Liberation Days we know about are taking place. Whether they're sponsored by us or by some other organization is immaterial to us. Some of the ALDs that we have listed on there are by organizations that have done nothing but criticize us. We don't give a damn because we know that organization is the key right now. So go there and go to the nearest one. Make it a trip for you. Plan your family to go to African. What is wrong with that? That's what we need, you all. Go there and find the commemoration nearest to you and wear white because we want to symbolize unity. And don't bring all that backward nonsense to us. Well, I don't want to wear white. Why don't we wear black? You don't study your culture and your history. In Africa, if you go to Africa, many of us have been many times, so we know that in Africa, white is the color for commemorations, for celebrations, for when people make their physical transition, everybody wears white. And this was the case for thousands of years, long before we knew what a European was, for the most part. So it has nothing to do with your limited understanding of white versus black and colorism and race and all that nonsense that was created by capitalism, okay? So wear white as a show of unity because we are advancing African culture because that, friends, enemies, is who we are, right? And then donate to the APRP to support African Liberation Day, or you can donate to those sources, Venmo, PayPal, just support the general work that we do year round. And if you want to know what that work is, if you're like, well, I don't know what y'all doing, just come hang out with me for a couple of days and you'll see it. Okay, just come hang out and you'll see it. If you don't think we're doing anything, we can show you the work that we do. And we do it proud. I'm trying to figure out how I can do more. I'm trying to figure out how I can get to my retirement as quickly as possible. I mean, I have a great job. I work at a labor union. I do that work, but I cannot wait to get to the point where I can do this Pan-African work full time. Because when you have a job, 40 hours a week, sometimes more, it takes away from your capacity. So this is what we do. So if you want to see what we do, we're happy to show you. You don't have to just contact me. Hang out with any committed APRP cadre and organizer, and you'll see the work taking place. We work constantly to bring these institutions. So remember, our theme in 2024, spread the word, same struggle, smash settler colonialism in Palestine, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. Because we know that we can't just protest against U.S. budgetary spending in Israel. That's great. That's great to do that. But this struggle has so many dimensions, and we've got to understand all of those dimensions so that we can put ourselves in a position to win. So when you go to those protests, make sure you make the connection This is consistent with what African people are doing who are fighting for Pan-Africanism. This protest in support of Palestinian people is consistent with what people are doing to talk about the necessity to liberate the Americas from colonialism and settler colonialism. This is all the same struggle. That's how we see it. So that's why we talk about it the way we do. And if you don't take anything else from this, please recognize that African Liberation Day is our voice. And as many of us participate in that voice, the louder it will be, the more people will hear it, and that will just push us farther along in the correct direction towards our Shimaranga, our freedom. So we thank you so much for joining us today. We want you to join us next week, continuing this question of land, you all. You know, this is a question of settler colonialism. Our topic next week, they celebrate Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. And we're going to have a topic, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Cinco de Mayo and land reclamation. You know, Cinco de Mayo is not just a day for you to get drunk and wear a Mexican sombrero. It's about this land was stolen from the indigenous people. People call themselves Chicanos, whatever identity they choose, that's their decision. But this land was stolen from them. Cinco de Mayo, the French tried to take their land in 1870, and these crooks and thugs took it and are still sustaining their control over it today. So we're going to talk about that. And we want to invite you to go to our Forward Ever shop, the upper left-hand corner QR code, buy some clothes that have revolutionary African slogans, skip this nonsense about supporting Black capitalist business and support revolutionary African organization. If there are some African businesses that are doing something for our people, because some of them try to do that, then those are the ones you should support. But these Negro businesses that are just trying to emulate capitalism, don't support them. Support revolutionary African organization. Go to our Forward Ever shop and buy something and tell somebody so they can buy something, and tell them to tell somebody so they can buy something. And then go to hoodcommunist.org, revolutionary African writings. We need to have that in your life. And to the left there of our screen, if you look at it, this is a flyer for the African Liberation Day commemoration here in California on the west coast of the United States of America. On May 25th, Saturday, we are having it at the East Side Arts Alliance, 2277 International Boulevard in Oakland, California. And we are inviting a number of participating organizations who are connected to settler colonialism in one way, form, or fashion. Please wear white. Come on out. We'll have food. It'll be a wonderful day, as it is every day. This year, May 25th, I'm celebrating 40 years as an active member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. I joined the APRP at African Liberation Day here in Sacramento, the first one in Sacramento in May of 1984. 40 years later, and I'm more fired up now than I ever have been. So you can support African Liberation Day at the bottom through the platforms we mentioned. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, aprp-intl.org. You have Burkina Books, one of our projects on the ground in Africa. For the APRP, we will be that'll be one of the places where we're hosting African Liberation Day in French. So we need money so that we can have translation of materials. So please help. A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. That's my book. I use that funds from that book just to finance my anti-fascist work. A lot of these young folks are reaching out. These protests are having support of Palestinians. These Zionists are showing up. They want to have discussions about how to protect themselves. So help me do that work. Buy my book, Forward Ever, Backwards Never. Stay strong. We hope you have a great rest of your day. And don't be discouraged, because we are winning.